Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of the Dynasty 365 podcast. Today, I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and I'm joined with Justin Taylor. And yes, we're going to be talking about the ever so exciting position of tight ends. Yeah, tight ends.
Absolutely. Woo!
We get it, folks. Tight end is not exactly the sexiest of position to talk to when it comes to fantasy football, but we're going to tell you who we like, why we like them, and we may even throw in a little added bonus of what format they would be best suited in for your fantasy football league. So, you know what? Let's just hit the music and get right to it. Man, JT, we're close, man. We are close to almost finally being done talking about pre-NFL draft content. We could finally start addressing landing spots. We can start addressing, coaching, fits and styles and schematics. I mean, the NFL draft is almost here. A week from tomorrow, I believe. Yeah, a week from tomorrow, round one. How are you feeling? You've said this very, numerous times. This is the time of year that you just love when it comes to sports and fantasy football and football in general. How you feeling, man?
I'm fired up. It's like I'm so ready for the draft, but I so love this process leading up to the draft, like going through all the players, looking at all the stuff. I know, I have some people like, why do you even talk about these guys or do landing spots until you see where the NFL drafts them? I love looking at the rankings. I love deciding where I like guys and then see where the NFL likes and then reevaluate from there. I think it makes a big difference because I think sometimes you get those landing spots, the prime landing spots in the NFL, and people are all over a guy. And I'm like, I didn't like that guy at all. So then I have to reevaluate. Do I need to move him way up my list, or do I need to kind of sit back and go like, kind of stick with what I thought? And like, I'm not going to overreact to a prime landing spot. So I love it all. As soon as the draft's over, I'm going to love getting in my drafts, doing all that, but I'm also going to miss it because I love this. It's my absolute favorite time of year, especially being in fantasy content producing. Like, I just love this time of year, talking rookies. It just brings my favorite stuff together. College football with the NFL. I love it because I have a bunch of people always asking me, they're like, oh, I don't know anything about this guy because they don't watch any college football. And I just, I get all pumped to talk to everybody. I'm like, oh, this guy, he played this against this team. Look for this on him. He's a stud. Like, so I love having, that intersection of college and pro together and kind of talk about two of my favorite things.
Speaking of studs, I want to introduce for this week the unofficial drink sponsor of Dynasty 365. We're talking about some aviation gin. Folks, just go out, just get yourself a bottle. No, Ryan Reynolds didn't pay me to say that, but if he was thinking about
if you want to, Ryan, you can jump on and become a Fantasy and Frame sponsor. Absolutely.
And he likes the small brands. He went to Wrexham over in Wales, so who's to say that he won't, come join us on this side? McElhenney, his partner. I could be an Eagles fan for a show or two. Not for the rest of my life.
He can talk me into it. He can talk me into it.
Exactly. Go out old-fashioned football in the chat. What's up, guys? What is up with you all tonight? Let's just get into some recent news, and I don't even know why we're even bothering talking about it. One, probably because it was written in the show sheet by Tyler, who will be back next week. But it has to deal with the Dallas Cowboys. Has to deal with a certain running back by the name of Royce Freeman. Yes, that is the exciting news for this week. Royce Freeman is a Dallas Cowboy.
I always love those headlines. I was like, Cowboys sign running back, and everybody's like, what? And then you open up, and it's like, oh, it's Royce Freeman.
Yeah.
Oh, dang it.
Yes. Yeah. This is not
that I don't like Royce Freeman. I really liked him, 4 or 5, 6 years ago, but not exciting news these days.
Oh, yeah. I liked him coming out of Oregon and going to Denver and thinking that was going to be a smash situation. Not so much. So, ironically, though, he was a little bit more efficient as a running back than Rachaad White, who may be discussed in the next hour when we talk about rookie dynasty rankings at the running back position.
People hate me when I get on Rachaad White talk because if they love him, they hate what I have to say about him. So it's like, good thing I'm not on that one. Good thing I can stay away. I won't get all the hate talking about Rachaad White that I usually get.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I know a bunch of the fourth and framers are watching, and we could definitely maybe use you as a spot guest here when we get to the Rashad White talk. So just pay attention to the studio there,
I can
JT, and
I can jump in. I'm here. I'm ready to roll tonight. Wednesday nights, we're talking football, baby. So I'm in all night long.
Old fashioned football. Thank you very much for the reminder. This just happened. J.K. Dobbins got signed to the Los Angeles Chargers. Now you have Gus Edwards and Dobbins sharing a backfield again, this time in Los Angeles. We know Dobbins is coming off of the Achilles injury. For the longest time, a lot of us were thinking, wow, if they don't address the running back position, the free agent signing that's going to go under the radar this year was Gus Edwards, just because of how efficient he is as a running back. You saw what he did last year. Maybe that was his ceiling last year, paired with Lamar Jackson. But the volume was going to be there, right? And what's the old adage? Volume is king in fantasy football. What does the addition of the J.K. Dobbins signing to LA do for you in terms of dynasty, moving up or down Gus Edwards for your rankings?
Dobbins is one of those guys, and almost everybody says, I mean, you would have loved to see that guy be healthy his whole career. I was a big Dobbins fan coming out of Ohio State. I love what he could bring. I had him on a ton of fantasy dynasty leagues. He was my steal last year. I just felt like, oh man, he's gonna bounce back. Finally, it's gonna be the year, and then another season-ending injury. So hopefully he can stay on. But it's like, man, you just got to figure, even if he does play for a whole year, which we haven't seen yet, there's no way that he just gets a million touches. So I like him. Gus, I think, is gonna be what they think he is, unless they come out of the draft with like absolutely no running backs. Um, Gus is gonna be Gus. I think he's gonna be a goal line guy. He's gonna be an okay flex play on certain weeks. But I am not holding my breath to be Gus all of a sudden be RB2 in a league consistently week to week. Dobbins, this probably moves him down just a hair, but again, we have to see can Dobbins stay healthy? Until that happens, you can't do much. So Dobbins is worth. I do like the landing spot for Dobbins though. He's worth a flyer. I mean, if you're going to pick up a guy, or if you're in a new startup and you're looking to just take someone late when it starts getting a little murky, I mean, I wouldn't mind throwing a pick on Dobbins and seeing if maybe for one time it works out. And if it doesn't, you're probably taking him late enough. It's not going to crush your team.
Speaking of crushing your team, let's talk about another situation here. Now that the gin is wearing off and my brain is starting to work again, let's talk about Rashee Rice a little bit. The legal issues just keep piling up here. Now he's getting sued by somebody. And what's the adage in pro sports, specifically in the NFL? You could, aside from going all Henry Ruggs on somebody, anything below that, 1 or 2 game suspension, slap on the wrist, max fine, yada yada yada. But man, this is a lot of information. It just keeps piling on and on and on and on.
It doesn't look great. It's just, here's the thing where I always tell people when they look at these things, man, the court of law is way different than people posting stuff on Twitter. What they allow, what doesn't get allowed, little secret. No one wants to go. Even the lawyers, they do not want to go to trial. They're going to plead this thing out wherever way they have to. It's all about pleading out cases, them getting a win. So if they drop a couple things that are kind of looking like they could hurt him really bad, if those charges get dropped and aren't official in the plea deal, it doesn't matter what someone wrote on Twitter, or what, even if it's actually true. If it's not in the deal and he pleads, the league, I guess, can do what he wants, but it's going to be harder to suspend a guy for something like that. So I think, people never really bring it up, but the Adrian Peterson situation where they suspended him for an entire year and then he doesn't even end up getting charged when it's all said and done, they like end up dismissing everything. I mean, those are the type of things where it's like, yeah, you can't necessarily, the fact that it was on camera is where you have people even more irate. I think if you didn't see it, then I think people are like, oh, he got in a car accident. Okay. Like, car accidents happen. Oh, right. He's in a nicer car driving a little faster. People drive nicer cars faster. They do. I just think everything, seeing it on camera, everything else made it worse. I could see, you just never know what the NFL is going to do when they decide to put the hammer on a guy and when they decide not to. I mean, I could see him going like giving him a ton of games just because they decide they really want to. But I also can see this getting pled way down, basically becoming a civil matter more than a criminal matter. And then turning around and they're like, okay, he gets 2 games for like misconduct.
Right.
So I think I always am very hesitant to get way ahead on these legal things
Right.
because they never end up totally what you think they're going to be. There's almost always some kind of plea deal, and part of the plea deal, and these guys have good lawyers, and that's the point part about having money. When you got a good lawyer, they're going to give you every last little push that you need. You know, they're going to be talking to the league. Well, if he has this and he doesn't have this, what does that mean for a suspension? And they're going to probably be working some of those things in to the language of the deal to kind of make it out for them. So I know it's tough when people have Rice right now. I'm not bailing on this. I'm not like, if you have Rice, I'm not just like selling for anything because I don't think he goes away. I mean, he might get 3 games, he might get 6 games, but it's not like he's not a fringe player that's just going to get cut and be out of the league now.
Right.
He's just not. And we've learned that if you can play, even if the Chiefs got crazy and cut him, you don't think someone's going to sign him right away? They will, and we've shown in the league that they will. Like, you know, the initial team has to cut him to make it look good, save face, and then someone comes right behind him and signs him. It happens every time.
I will say that right now is probably the best time to, I would say, sell Rice in Dynasty, just because we don't know what the Chiefs are going to do in the NFL draft. Do they go out with their last pick in the first round and go out and get that wide receiver? A lot of people are saying Troy Franklin would make a lot of sense with the Kansas City Chiefs, you know, because if that happens, now it's like, okay, well, what's my incentive for paying up for Rice? Because now he's potentially facing legal situations and they already had to address the wide receiver position in the draft. So you're decreasing his value. They're decreasing his value if they do in fact take one of these, you know, top wide receivers in the NFL draft. So this is the time to sell and maximize, you know, what you can get before next Thursday.
I do agree with you there, Jorge. If you are wanting to move him and you don't just say you want him off your team because you just don't want to think about it, you don't have to worry about it. I agree with you. Like, now is probably the prime maximum time. You're not going to get max value for him, but at this point, if you're like, hey, I just want to save face, I'll take a late 2nd round draft pick or mid-second for him or something, and you're like, hey, I'll just reset. I don't think there's any reason not to make a deal. If you could do that. I mean, I wouldn't fire sale him for nobody, but but like, you're right. I think you're right. This is probably prime time to move him if you're gonna.
Got John McGlynn in the chat here listening from work. What's up, John? Got to get you on this show one night, man. I tell you what, you're always
been on a
welcome.
Crazy work schedule lately.
I know.
That's why we haven't been able to get our show on together. He's been on a nuts work schedule. He's like, sorry, man, I work at 12s all week. I was like, I understand, John. I know how it goes. Gotta get that money first.
Well, I'll tell you what, when John is, you know, when the schedule gets better, nobody does it better than John and JT on the Dynasty Evaluation podcast when they get on air during the day, during the work week. It is fantastic content. You all crushed it with your draft talk last week. It's always something special. So always pay attention to whenever the Dynasty Evaluation show goes on the Fantasy and Frames podcast network of channels. Yeah, so that pretty much wraps up, I guess, recent news, things to take into account. And, you know, for those who are just tuning in for the first time, thank you very much. We have been covering, you know, all the positions on offensive relevance for the NFL draft, going back to quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. And you can find all those episodes if you subscribe to the Fantasy and Frames podcast, as well as go over to our YouTube channel and you can actually watch, or if you're driving, put it on there, but listen, safe driving. Listen to the show. We definitely like all your support and you know, and subscribing and liking the videos and letting us know what you think, what you like, what you don't like. Help us get better so we can help you have more fun and have fun playing fantasy football. And let me tell you, we're gonna be putting it to the test tonight, because the tight ends in Dynasty and rookie drafts it's always a tough situation. And you know, it would be very easy for a lot of content creators out there to be like Brock Bowers, End of show. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And don't get me wrong, that thought did cross my mind, but then again, I'm not an idiot. Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I'm not a complete idiot. Let's put it like that. It's one of those things where, you know, Josh Hudson over at Club Fantasy, him and Gator J and Chris Battistel, they did a mock draft show on Monday night, and Josh Hudson had a really good comment about tight ends and rookie draft theory, where he's saying, you know what, in my rookie drafts, I'm just throwing, you know, darts at the wall and just selecting as many tight ends as I can, because all it takes is for one tight end in fantasy to have a really good week, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're a top 5 tight end. You know what I mean? And you give hope. You know, if you don't get the Laportas and the Kelseys and the Kittles and the so on and so forth, then it's a crapshoot anyhow. So you might as well just throw all your rookie picks there that way. And I get that, and I respect that opinion, but it doesn't mean you can't look for certain profiles when it comes to player comps. Like, you know, landing spot for tight ends, you know, generally more so, I want to say, than any other position matters the most, unless you have one of these elite prospects like a Brock Bowers, right? For example, for this year's draft.
Absolutely.
But, you know, one of the things, you know, a couple of things we're going to be talking about, you know, and as JT and I, we do it on Shoot the Gap, or IDP show, or whenever we're on, you know, doing a podcast together. I like to look at things from an analytical perspective. He likes to look at things from like a film perspective. And somewhere in the middle, folks, you get a profile of what the player is, and that kind of helps you make up your own decision as far as where you address value for this player. So let's get into, you know, Mr. Tight End 1 for everybody in this year's draft, Brock Bowers, who blocks, by the way, really well in pass blocking situations per PFF. Last year, 6 touchdowns, 664 yards, played 47.9% of snaps from the slot, yards after the catch per reception, an elite 8.6, yards per route run, 2.74. I don't care what format. I know we're talking dynasty here, but whether it's dynasty, redraft, or best ball, like, I have no problem paying up for Brock Bowers at that tight end position, just because, you know, I hate saying this, and I hate the people who abuse this expression, generational talent. Okay. I'm not going to say it. I mean, I just said it, but I'm not going to say that in regards to Bowers, because I don't like being that person who says generational talent. Oh my God, my skin is on fire. It's like steel wool.
Stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say he's pretty damn fucking good, you know, and you kind of really want pretty damn fucking good players on your fantasy roster, especially for dynasty. What, you know, if anything, could you tell us, JT, about Brock Bowers that maybe people don't know, or just some, you know, hidden nuggets there that just reaffirm what we're all thinking in the dynasty community regarding him for fantasy football?
Yeah, I think so. Tight end is kind of a strange position, kind of how you brought up. It kind of has been an afterthought in fantasy for the most part, especially in rookie drafts. You're like, why would I waste time on a tight end? You know, we've kind of always said, you know, a lot of times there is that 3-year gap for tight ends. They get in the league, they kind of have to figure stuff out as a rookie. The second year, they kind of make a step. And then that third year is where you really see those guys finally hit. They're stronger. They can block. They can figure out the offense. They can kind of get involved receiving. So that, I still think that's a real thing. I think that 3-year build for tight ends is a real thing. Now the issue is we've just seen some guys come out of the gates and crush the last couple of years, and now we're like, oh, do we really need to wait 3 years on that tight end anymore? I mean, when you have a Sam Laporta come out last year and basically is fantasy tight end 1 as a rookie, which you just never see. Now all of a sudden you're like, maybe this guy matters a lot more. And now I think the increased popularity of tight end premium makes you have to pay attention. Before tight end premium, you're like, if I get guy 1 or 2, yes. If I don't care. Because guy 3 to 15 is a point of difference a game, a point and a half. But with the tight end premium, it makes a big difference. And now we've seen the shift in the NFL where we're getting a lot more of these athletic tight ends that can catch and block instead of, you know, for a long time was a lot of blocking tight ends and you just like got lucky if they dropped one off to you on a 5-yard out. It's just you're getting these guys that now actually can catch the ball, make plays after making the catch. It's supposed to be like, hey, I'm just gonna sit down and I'm not hating on you at all, Jack Doyle, former Indianapolis Colts tight end. Love Jack Doyle.
Love it.
But the days of Jack Doyle, like, hey man, I'm just gonna go 5 yards. I'm the outlet guy, and I'm super sure-handed. I'm gonna make the catch, but I'm getting tackled right away. Like every catch I catch is a catch for 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards. And that's just what I am, because I'm going to make the catch and I'm going to get tackled, but I got to get the first down. Those guys, while they were really, solid NFL players, they weren't great for fantasy. They just weren't. And now we're getting these guys that you're getting more of the athletic profile where you're like, oh, they're not just a dump it off to guy. You're figuring out, like, teams are like making these guys their top guys. When you get a Travis Kelce, a Mark Andrews, who like is the number one target on their team, it just changes everything. And then you have the tight end premium being 1.5, even 2 in certain leagues. I'm in leagues where sometimes it's more. Well, now that becomes even more advantageous. And then if anybody out there's, I know some of our listeners have played in start 2 tight end leagues. Now those guys are gold. They're absolute gold, because you got to play 2 guys every week and you just can't get crushed at the tight end position. So really thinking about these tight ends, they have become more and more important in making sure you get guys that are going to help your team. And it's not such a throwaway. And I tell people this all the time. I had a league that I've run for years and years and years, my home league. At one point, we actually talked about getting rid of the tight end and making it a flex spot where it was like tight end or wide receiver. Because we were basically like, the wide receiver 3 on most teams are beating all these tight ends. And like, we're getting no points from our tight end. Is it even worth starting them? So like, that's how bad it was. And that's like within the last 10 years. So we've seen a big shift and adjustment. So me being that big, open, long-winded dive into tight ends here. Well, I mean, no one's ever going to claim that I'm long-winded, but my big intro there is, I think Brock Bowers is really special. I think he is really, really special. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why I think he's special. I know everybody talks about him. They say he's the number one guy, but there is some reasons behind that. He's not just the number one tight end in this class. I think he's one of the top guys in the last 10 to 20 years.
Don't say it.
And this is the reason I'm telling you that I think he is I think because the game has changed. Now, if he came out 20 years ago, am I super high on him? Probably not, because I'm probably looking at him and going, where is he going to play in the NFL? What is he going to do? But the way they've changed the game, with the way the Travis Kelce's and the Mark Andrews, I remember Mark Andrews coming out of Oklahoma, and he was one of the rare tight ends in college that actually had very, very high production. A lot of times you see these guys and they get drafted on an athletic profile at tight end, and you don't see a lot of production in college because just a lot of colleges don't work their tight ends into the offense. It's just not part of the system. So he was one of the few guys that came out, and we all remember what happened, right? Hayden Hurst went in the first round, and they took Mark Andrews, and I think it was the 3rd, correct?
Yeah.
He was a 3rd round pick. Well, Andrews, obviously, as we've seen over their careers, has been a much better player. But that's also because I think teams weren't sure about him, because he was really a receiving tight end. He wasn't much of a blocker in college at Oklahoma. So I look at this on the other side. Can Bowers block? Yes, that means he's not going to get taken off the field. He can block. Whatever people want to say about his size, is he big enough? The guy just wants it. Go watch film and watch him block. He gives effort. He's not one of these guys that comes out and just gives you a lazy punch. He's like, oh, if they're not throwing me the ball, I'm not really going to try hard on this play. That's not him. This guy's a bulldog. He wants to play, hard every play. So knock that out already. He can block. I'm not worried about his blocking at the NFL level. Now, the next thing I look at is, okay, did his offense, his team work him in? Well, not only did they work him in, he's been the best player on the best team in the country 3 straight seasons. That's not an accident. One year I go, okay, well, they found some loopholes. They figured out how to beat some teams. They went to him. No, he's been Georgia's best offensive player every year for 3 years on a team that won 2 national championships and was a game away from possibly making the Final Four and maybe winning another national championship last year. So, and part of the reason he got hurt, he got injured, and their offense was not as good when he wasn't in there. I mean, this guy for college stats, I mean, these are some of the greatest college stats for a tight end I've ever seen. I mean, he freshman year, true freshman, 56 catches, 882 yards, and 13 touchdowns. As a tight end, that is astronomical in college. 882 and 13 touchdowns for a tight end. Okay, so you go, okay, man, was this guy a fluke or is he the real deal? Comes back sophomore year. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody's like, oh, we got to stop this guy. 63 catches, 942, and 7 touchdowns. Now, this is on a good team that wants to run the ball. So it's not like he was in some super pass happy offense, just chucking it all over the field. Like he is their legit wide receiver one. Comes back last year, even though he misses, I think it was 3 games, and it might have been 4. 56 catches, 714, and 6 touchdowns. Every year, 15-8 a catch, 15 a catch, 12-8 a catch. This guy isn't a dump it off. He is a beast. They handed the ball off to him. He had a 90-yard run. Yes, a tight end, 90-yard run. I mean, they wanted to get the ball in his hands. And the thing I think that's super underrated about him, when he makes contact and runs through a defender, he explodes through the contact. He explodes. He's not a guy that slows way down once he gets hit. He gets hit and explodes through and ends up being faster after he got hit. It's crazy to watch him run away from defenders after contact. And I think that's a huge thing for me. Does he run a super fast 40 time? Yes. We said, look at the pro day. It's, whether it's official or not, it was like a 4.53, 4.54, which is insane for a guy that size. It looks like it on film. I mean, he is fast. He is not, 4.4 running back fast, but a guy his size, he's runs what a lot of the running backs in this draft run, low 4.5s. So, I mean, he is that. He can do everything. I'm super high on him. I'm not usually super high on tight ends, as you can hear it. I just in a startup draft, I just took him in the 3rd round overall, not rookie, startup overall 3rd round. I think he right now in dynasty is a top 3 to 5 tight end now, and I think he has tight end 1 upside big time. So if I'm believing in a guy, this is the guy I'm believing in. This is the guy I'm taking early. And I'm the king of, I love taking tight ends like the 4th and 5th round of rookie drafts and just stacking them. I'll take a bunch of them and just see what guy kind of makes it, throw them on my taxi squad and see if they hit down the line. I love doing that because I like I loved last year's tight end class. I have a million of those guys on my rosters. I was taking them everywhere in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. This is a guy, if I'm in a tight end premium league, if it's a big premium, he's in the conversation for 1-1 for me. He really is. I think he's top 5 to 6 anyway in basically any format. But if you're in a start 2 tight end, or if you're in a tight end 2 point per reception league, I am highly considering taking him at the 101. I really am.
I'm so proud of you, JT. And not just because you just killed it, just emphasizing just how badass Brock Bowers is, but you didn't go down the road of using the term generational, which is what I was talking about. I
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. The people out there are saying thank you for not saying generational is the most overused expression, even though, you can probably make the case for it there. So obviously, my number 1 tight end, your number 1 tight end, you can find your rankings over at DLF. You can find, the rookie rankings for some of the Fantasy and Frames team over at fantasyandframes.com. Right now, myself, Drew Scott, Chris Battistell, Rhett Manuel, we all have our rankings updated for all the different positions for rookies. So head over there, fantasyandframes.com, check it out, as well as head over to DLF and check out JT's. Now, here's the thing. Let's get into the next few tight ends. And this is where things get kind of tricky. Like, I think we can all say with a shadow of a doubt, wherever Bowers goes, like, they would have to colossally mess up. Like, just be we're talking like Urban Meyer and Jacksonville Jaguar level of like fucked up dumb. I just made that term up. I think it's pretty funny.
I love it.
Thank you. they would have to colossal, just utterly waste his skill set for him to not be successful from a fantasy perspective. But before we get into those tight ends, you brought up something a couple times. I just wanted to double check. For me, and for those who are listening who may be starting Dynasty for the first time or getting into like figuring out like what's the way to play Dynasty, what's the format style that is most common. And you mentioned tight end premium. For me, it's Superflex, tight end premium, PPR is kind of like my go-to default setting. And I know it's a lot of people's other default setting when it comes to Dynasty. What is yours, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, that's what I like to play Dynasty. I'm in quite a few leagues I've been in for like 15, 20 years. And so a couple of those we've stayed away from Superflex and we stayed away from tight end premium because the guys in that league just kind of want to stay with what that league has been. I was pushing for it harder earlier in my days, and now I'm like not pushing for it anymore. I kind of leave it because I'm in so many other leagues that have that, and now I don't mind having the variety. My preferred is Superflex. Tight end premium. That's what I prefer, but I definitely love playing in some 2 QB leagues, which makes QBs gold. You play in those start 2 tight end leagues, makes those tight ends gold, especially when you adjust the scoring. So I'm like, I play in everything because I'm a fan of that's what makes it fun to me is it's a different strategy in every league. I can pick different, I can build different. But that's my preferred would be, but see, here's the thing with me on a Bowers, even if I'm in a redraft league, and it's not tight end premium, I'm not taking him anywhere like first, second round. So let me say that. But whenever your league starts taking tight ends, like he's a guy that I would definitely be considering. And definitely if it's a keeper league, I like him because you can probably get him pretty late. And then if he blows up, you get to keep him in that round or league. So he's a guy I'm going to be drafting seriously in every format. Now, what format depends on where I draft him, but I'm taking him in every format. And I have to say, like, that's a rarity for me for rookie tight ends. I usually just don't take them in like redraft leagues and keepers and stuff.
So John McGlynn in the chat, get to my guy already. All right,
I know who John's guy is. I'm going to talk good about him, John. I know who John's guy is.
All right. We've had our nice soliloquy about Brock Bowers. He's awesome. Keith Fleming from the Daily Fix Show here at Fantasy and Frames. Eat your heart out. You're welcome. All right, let's get into the next 2 tight ends here. Look, Brock Bowers is a total package. He has the efficiency, he has the production. Now we're running into situations where you have some production, but you lack efficiency, but that's compensated by opportunity, or you have low efficiency and low production, but you have high touchdown numbers, which can kind of like skew yardage totals. Like things get messy, is where I'm trying to explain to you all. So let's just start off with my number 2 tight end in this rookie class. And for me, he is a dynasty format only tight end. Unlike Bowers, where I said you redraft best ball dynasty, like every format, take him. For me, I'm specifically just holding on to him in dynasty. I'm not going out of my way in redraft or best ball. That's Ben Sennett, tight end, 6 touchdowns last year, 669 yards. Again, grades out well in terms of blocking, so there's no concern about him coming off of the field. Played 34.4% of the slot snaps last year, 6.8 yards after the catch per reception, yards per out run, 2.02. So, not as efficient as Brock Bowers, but, what he has, what his skill set is for his size and what his production has led to, yes, I would be willing to take a gamble on him in the 3rd round of my drafts and have that quarterback or have that tight end that has shown that they can produce with their level of efficiency that can definitely stay on the field. And I know a lot of people like to shit on the fact that like, oh, well, it shouldn't matter that they block well or whatever. You know what? You know who it matters to? Coaches. That's how you stay on. That's how you stay on the field. Last time I checked, NFL coaches don't care about why you think a player should be fantasy relevant. They care about why a player should be football relevant, NFL relevant. And if that's their barometer, that's where your barometer should be too when it comes to fantasy. I think he's a situation. All of these players that we're talking about next are all situation dependent. But I really, really like the fact that he was able to take his efficiency, and there's such a close correlation between his efficiency, where he was playing on the field, and his blocking towards his ultimate college production there with 6 touchdowns, 669 yards. But a dynasty only type of player. What are your thoughts on Ben Simmons, and where do you have him ranked, JT?
Jatavian Sanders, correct? That's who you just said Senate, but we'll get to Senate later. So yeah,
No, no, no,
Jatavian Sanders.
no. I was talking about Senate. That's
Oh,
who
you're
I'm
talking
going.
about Senate, not
Yeah.
okay. For
Sorry.
some reason, I thought you were talking about Jatavian. I was looking at my list. I was looking at Jatavian Sanders, so I'm screwing that up. I apologize.
No. Look, I'm not saying that there aren't like similarities between these guys. I'm talking about Senate. I have him as my tight end too.
So sorry, I'm like looking at my range. I blew that. My apologies. I have Senate as my tight end 3. I have Jatavian Sanders as my tight end 2. Senate's my 3. I like Senate a lot. He's a guy that played fullback. I think he can get on a team, kind of be that H back / fullback / second tight end. I like the fact that he can move around. I like the fact that coaches are going to be able to use him in different ways. And like we said, that means he stays on the field. The more he's on the field, the better chances he's going to get you fantasy stats. So I actually really like him. He's a third rounder for me, depending on the format. Obviously, in a non any tight end premium, I'm taking those guys later. But if it's any kind of tight end premium, I'm really liking him in the third round. He's a guy I'm going to be looking at. Landing spot will matter, but he's a guy that I would expect to take a year or two. I wouldn't take him and go, oh, he's gonna I'm gonna be able to put him in my lineup, right away. I don't think so. He's one of those guys you're gonna have to wait on. He's gonna have to build up a little bit, as he is a little bit newer to playing tight end. But I like his skill set. I like everything he did at Kansas State. He was one of their top receivers, which I think is whenever a tight end in college can be one of his team's top targets and receivers, that means the coaching staff really trusts him and the quarterback trusts him. So that's a big thing. So I really like him too. He's number 3 for me, but I like him for the metrics. They all look good. I think he's a guy that NFL coaches will like. He just does all those different things, and I think they're going to love the fact that he has that fullback background where they can be like, oh, we can make him like kind of a Kyle Jurkovich. We can make him like that. He can also be our second tight end. He can do some different things for us. So I like him a lot. I'm taking him third round in tight end premium leagues.
All right. Let's get to our next tight end here. And this is where things are going to get spicy, folks. Okay. Because he's not that efficient for me, but I have him as my number 3 tight end, and you'll think it's hilarious where JT has him ranked. And I'm going to stand by it. Senior TCU 6'6", 249. I really like Jared Wiley. I like the athletic profile. I like the fact that his, he led all of FBS tight ends with 8 touchdown receptions as a super senior, 5 of them coming in the red zone. I like the fact that he plays the majority in the slot. He had 8 touchdowns for 520 yards last year. I don't like that his yards after the catch per reception is 6.4. I definitely don't like his 1.61 yards per route run, but I like overall what he's able to do, given his his height, his size. You can't teach size.
Mm-hmm.
You can't teach size. And yes, is he able to break away these large runs? No. But what he is able to do is take what he's, efficient at, which is not much when it comes to these metrics I was just describing. But you can't deny the production as well as where he's landed at. So he's, again, another person who I would say is strictly dynasty, definitely tight end premium. But there's something about him. There's something it's the size, it's the production, it's where he's been comfortable playing. And I don't know. You look at all the other yards after the catch per reception metrics that we'll be talking about for other tight ends. Yes, some of them that we'll be talking about, for me at least, later on, and when we talk about our rankings, they're going to be higher. But it's the one thing that's really awesome that sets him apart from these other tight ends that may have the greater metrics and efficiency and elusiveness. He blocks well. These other guys don't block well. And again, I just went over this earlier. I'm sorry, that shit matters. I don't know what else to tell you. If you're not on the field, you're not on the field. So yeah, he's my sneaky tight end 3. I really was impressed with what I saw watching his film and just looking at his athletic profile, and he screams to me this is a horrible comp, but if some team wherever he lands does not utilize him properly, okay, he feels like a wasted opportunity, kind of like Darnell Washington was a wasted opportunity going to Pittsburgh last year. A lot of people are like, oh, Darnell Washington, he's just this big guy who's bigger than every offensive lineman for Pittsburgh, which is true. But the guy is also freakishly strong, freakishly athletic, and makes great catches. At least he did in Georgia, playing second fiddle to Brock Bowers, obviously. No disrespect to Darnell Washington for saying second fiddle, but you get where I'm going with this. What are your thoughts on Jared Wiley? And I'm sure everybody's curious to hear where you have him ranked in your tight ends.
I have him actually. So he's a guy I agree with you because the blocking skill. I have him as tight end 7 right now.
Yeah, spicy,
but I could see him being one of the guys that jump for me post draft. And the reason I say that is because what you said, I have a lot of guys that are kind of tweeners that are more receiver centric guys that are probably not going to play a lot because they don't block that well. And that's where I could actually see him jumping those guys. If he ends up going, 3rd or 4th round, and some of these other guys are really late picks, they go 6th, 7th round that are more receiving tight ends that I have in front of them. I could see Wiley moving up because a couple of these guys are going to need really nice landing spots as far as they're going to have to use them as slot guys. They're going to have to like the receiving profile a lot because the running profile or the blocking profile isn't there for them. So I definitely, that is a spicy take with him at 3, but I definitely could see him ending up there post draft because I could see an NFL team really falling in love with the size speed combination, because that's the one thing is there's not a lot of guys in this draft that have that combo, that have the big size you really want, but also do have the receiving attributes that you talked about.
All right, let's get into one of your guys here. What's a tight end you want to talk about, and let us know where you have him.
Well, I'll jump. My tight end 2 is Jatavian Sanders from Texas. Okay. Now he's a guy. He's one that's interesting because he looked much better at Texas, and the problem was the NFL Combine. He did not look great, and I think he scared some people away. I think for a lot of people, he was clear cut tight end 2, and now people aren't so sure. The 40 time was a little disturbing. He's a guy that's really athletic. He ran a 4.69 40. I mean, it's not awful for a tight end, but it's not great either. So I think people are a little turned off on that. He is 6'4", 245, so he's got decent size. He can block. To me, he's one of those guys, when you look at the metrics, they're maybe not there, but he looks more athletic on film. When you're actually watching him in a game going against other guys, he looks more athletic than he does in a workout setting. But usually that's where everybody falls in love with the kind of the workout warrior tight ends that hit all the great RAS scores. He's just not that guy. So for me, Sanders' landing spot's going to matter. I think he can block, but I think he's going to have to get it on a team that uses him. I don't see him being a big first year bust out. I think he's a guy you're going to have to wait on a little bit too. If he goes to a team with an offensive coordinator that has a history of using the tight end, he goes up in my list. I did some early drafts. I was taking him like mid to late 2nd. He's probably pushed into the 3rd for me now, unless I just see something I love where he gets drafted way higher than I think he's going to get drafted, and he goes to a team that I'm like, I like him there a lot. Then maybe he gets back into that mid 2nd for me. But he's dropped a little bit. He's more of a 3rd rounder for me, unless I see that spot. Because again, his combined production, his athletic score wasn't great for tight ends. I think NFL.com had him ranked 12th among the tight ends this year, but his production score was 2nd, and his overall score was 2nd. So it just kind of depends on what you want to look at him. So to me, I like Sanders. I probably I'm a little down on him from where I had him, but I'm still high on him because he's still my tight end 2 in this draft class. But I just don't think he's quite as sure thing, as like a Bowers. So, I mean, I think there's a pretty wide gap for me between Bowers and Sanders.
So one of the things I guess I found concerning was that last year we only saw him play 20.5% from the slot. He mostly was a inline tight end. graded out as a poor blocker. We look at
Mhm.
the production. 1 touchdown on 502 yards. Again, not not jaw dropping, awe inspiring. You look at his yards per route run, 1.77. Again, we're setting Bowers as the standard of 2.74. Like he obviously was better than Jared Wiley, and where he actually really excelled the most was his yards after the catch per reception. Like this guy is getting yards after the catch. But it's the unknown, right? It's the unknown of like
Mhm.
seeing him as being used as a receiving threat throughout his career, where it's kind of like, well, he has the tools and metrics. If he was just in the right situation, that would use him properly. But is he going to be that person?
That's the question. I think, whether a team thinks that they can improve his blocking, that they can get him in there and be like, okay, we can make him a better blocker. We think he's got the body. We think he has the technique,
But
the
that's
hands,
also
but that's a tough one to do. Is he going to go to a team that they think they can do that? And that's where I think for tight ends, it's a big time where they get drafted, because you'll see if they go in the second, third round, a lot of times that means teams really think they can develop these guys. If they're going later as a tight end than the third round, oh, it, it really turns into like this guy's probably a big time project, because a lot of these tight ends are already projects. They just are. The tight end coming out of college is not the same as what they play in the pros. So a lot of these guys do take time to develop. And so if a team's going to spend a second or third on you, that means, okay, this team is willing to put in a lot of work and they think you can be that guy in the end. So that's where I'm really interested to see what happens to Sanders. If he all of a sudden goes in the fourth round and he's like goes to a team that like uses like a multiple time, say he goes in the fourth round of the Seahawks, I'm like, oh,
mm,
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I would be out. Like, I mean, I would be taking him like at the end of my drafts, because I'm like, okay, even though the Seahawks are bad, they use a lot of tight ends. He's never gonna get like full production scheme. We've seen that with Noah Fant, and it's like, you know,
Well, look,
but
things are
again,
different.
they do have a new offensive coordinator, so
Yes,
they do have new guys. So again, I can't completely. I'm saying that as a bias for what the past the
decade.
team did there at Seattle. But those are the type of situations I mean. Like if he ends up being like kind of picked late and goes to kind of a situation where teams are used to using 2, 3 guys and they don't ever usually have a guy at tight end, then I'm going to be a little more worried um, than I would be if someone like the Chargers take him in like the second round. Then I'd be like, oh, what? Oh, second round of the Chargers. I'm like, John Harbaugh loves him. They're gonna like play this guy, and he's gonna have a lot of chances. That would change my mind on him big time. Then I feel like outside of Bowers, this tight end class for me, the rankings are gonna get totally shuffled once I
Oh,
see where
absolutely.
they go and what draft capital they get, and then what team they end up on is gonna really shuffle a few of these guys for me.
We got John McGlynn again in the chat, and he's right. Red zone usage for a tight end is very important. Also, absolutely.
Mhm.
Like you want these guys who are, especially for the red zone and end zone targets. You want the big body tight ends who can make the contested catches that can, score those touchdowns. Absolutely. Um, so it's funny that you have him at 2. I have him at 6. So it's really
Mhm.
the pass blocking. I will say this though, if he does land in a pass heavy, and what does that mean? Like everybody's pass heavy nowadays, but like a real pass
A
heavy
real half pass
situation,
heavy, yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would be comfortable taking him as a dart throw in a best ball, like one of these underdog best balls or FFPC best balls. Just somebody that I think, and it's because of the 8.1 yards after the catch per reception. Like when he does get the ball in his hand, dude can turn it upfield and get you
Mhm.
yardage.
And that's why I
And get
said on film, you watch him catch the ball and run with it. He looks way more athletic than his actual testing numbers were, because he looked better running and carrying the ball than his actual speed was. His game speed looked much better than what he did at the combine.
Let's get to our next tight end since John brought him up here, or excuse old fashioned football did. And sorry to the fourth and frames guys. We're going to be running a little bit late for today's show,
I'll
but
speed through these last couple. So
not a problem. Let's get the Jaheim Bell. Let's get the Jaheim Bell. I actually have him as my number 5. Where do you have him ranked for your tight end rankings?
yes, I have Bell currently sitting as my tight end 4.
Okay.
I like him a lot. He's a guy that scheme is going to matter big time. He can do all kinds of stuff. He's athletic. Florida State used him as a running back. They used him as, a fullback. They put him outside. He's a guy that I think can work, but he needs to be on an offense where the offensive coordinator is like wants to work the ball to him. I think then he could be good because he just I like what he shows. I like his athletic ability. He's small. He doesn't block well. So again, you want to get him on the field where he's doing different things. You're not just setting him up and saying, "Hey, block this defensive end." If you do that, you're screwed. He's not going to do that well. So I like the idea that somebody is going to use him correctly. Now, I would love to see the Colts get Brock Bowers. Like, I'd absolutely love to see him get it at 15 or trade up for him, but they love to stack tight ends. They've got a couple of huge guys. If they don't get him, he's a guy I could see striking using multiple different ways in Indy. I would love to see them maybe jump and get him in like the 4th or 5th round. I think that would be an interesting landing spot as a few others. I do like Bell, but he's going to have to be on a team that's creative offensively to get the ball in his hands.
I just want you to know you did not make a friend with Drew Scott, who will be on 4th and Frames next, because he's a Jelani Woods fanboy. And
I love Jelani. See, but they play a lot of 2 tight ends. That's why I think those guys would fit well together, because I think you can play Jelani and Bell together, because Jelani's going to be your big guy that's going to block, that's going to kind of almost be the extra lineman, and then Bell's going to be the guy that plays the line. All you need to do is have him chip. He's not going to have to stack a guy. He'll just chip a guy, and then he can run routes and do different things off it. So I actually like it if he's in a situation where he's on a team with a big tight end and he can play with that guy. That's why I like him on the Colts, because I think him and Jelani Woods in a lot of 2 tight end sets would actually kind of look nice next to each other.
All right, let's get to our last 2 tight ends. And this next one, real quick, Cade Stover, senior, Ohio State, 6'3", 247. I guess I would call his blocking meh or mid, as the kids say.
Yeah.
Played 44% of the snaps in the slot this past season. Yards after the catch per reception, 6.9. Yards per route run, 2.16. So again, in terms of, the yards per route run efficiency metric, he's right around there with Ben Sinnott, with Jaheim Bell. I will go back to Jaheim Bell for 1 second. Best ball, again, another player, just because of that yards after the catch per reception being so high. He definitely has that upside again, depending on landing spot. But going back to Cade Stover, 5 touchdowns, 576 yards last year at Ohio State. Like, okay, good. Like, he'd probably be, again, just a dynasty tight end premium only situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yes, and as we discussed earlier in the show, that yes, there are dynasty leagues that don't have tight end premium. So, just think about that. But I wouldn't consider him for like a best ball or any type of like, ooh, let me get like the sneaky play that nobody's talking about. Like, it ain't him. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's gonna need some time to figure out where he fits on a team. I liked him at Ohio State. He ran the middle of the field really well. He was a nice drop off for McCord, and he actually did pretty well down the field when CJ Stroud was there. So he's one of those guys. I got him right now as my tight end 5, but I could see him dropping if I don't like the landing spot, because again, he's not a great blocker. He's gonna have to be. We talked about this often, and I hate to say this because it's not even what I should be comparing him to, but he does a nice job, like Travis Kelce, of not necessarily running great routes, but just finding a good spot. He'll kind of like run around and find the spot for the quarterback in the zone. I think Stover does that well. So if you get on a team that's looking for that, goes against a lot of zone coverage where he can kind of find a spot, I think that's nice. I don't think he's going to be a lot of guys one-on-one. Again, he doesn't block very well. He's not super fast. He's not very big either. So he's kind of like a bigger wide receiver almost. So I like him. I'm taking a shot on him in rookie dynasty drafts, but I'm taking him like last round, probably as just a dart throw. I'm going to throw him on my taxi squad and just hold him and kind of see if he develops over the next 2 to 3 years. But he's my 5. But again, situationally, if teams don't look at him, they're like, I don't know how we can use him properly, and he drops to the 6th, 7th round of the NFL draft, I'm like, I could end up being totally out. I mean, I might end up seeing like I'd rather take an undrafted rookie free agent, running back, or like a late round wide receiver instead. So right now he's 5 for me, but I absolutely could see myself not taking him at all if I don't like the draft capital or the situation.
Yeah, he's my 4. And again, you can check out our rankings, mine over at fantasyandframes.com, JT's over at DLF. All right, let's get to our last guy real quick, and then we'll address the 3
For
top
you,
wide
John
receivers.
McGlynn.
Am I John McGlynn?
No, this is for
Yeah.
I go. This is for you, John McGlynn. This is his guy right here. We'll talk about him last because we made him stick on the whole way through the show, so we to talk about his guy.
Well, JT, let start us out, man. Theo Johnson, let's go.
Theo Johnson, tight end, Penn State. Now he's the guy I think goes up draft boards NFL wise because he's got the size, the speed, production. Not much at Penn State, but anybody who watched Penn State, no one on their offense was productive the last couple years. But his RAS score through the roof. Super athletic dude. I could see him going in the second round of the NFL draft. I really could. Just was 6'6", 260, basically right in that range. I mean, big guy, athletic. Teams love that. You can't teach size and athleticism. Teams love that in the NFL. They'll figure out how to use them correctly. I've got him right now as number 4, but I can see him being that guy that shoots up boards and ends up becoming the number 2 in fantasy drafts because he gets picked so early in the NFL draft. And people are like, oh, maybe I should be looking at him a little more. He's been going like 4th round in a lot of the mocks we've been doing. And John, I told him, I'm sorry, man. I don't think you'll get him there after the draft. I think you're going to have to pick him sooner. But he has, outside of the actual stats, he has the athletic profile, the size that everybody wants. That's, to me, he's one of those guys that has that in this draft. So I've got him right now at 4. I could see him jumping to 2 for me in my rankings, depending if he goes really high, just because of the profile. And teams love that, especially when it comes to tight end in the NFL. They love that overall speed, athletic, size profile.
So let me just preface this right now. He's my tight end 7 because I was going off of metrics for him. And you look at this past year, 325 yards, only had a 4.9 yards after the catch per reception. Everybody we've talked to has had above 6 or more, 1.24 yards per route run. But here's the thing. Here's the thing that you have to have an appreciation for. Despite the tremendous lack of inefficiency, the dude had like 6 touchdowns. Like, that's nothing to scoff at. And what you really like about him is his contested catch percentage, where he caught 75% of his contested targets for this offense. So again, it's one of those situations like you mentioned, like not the treasure trove of opportunity that you were hoping to see out of him, but it's one of those situations for a tight end for him, I believe, that used in the right situation, and it goes far beyond just team landing spot. It's like, I don't really care so much as far as the team is concerned with him, but I do like the fact if he's used the right way. You can be on the shittiest passing offense, whatever, but if he's being utilized and targeted in the red zone or in the end zone more often than not, then I'm feeling kind of happy if I'm the fantasy manager.
Yeah, the 11 touchdowns is where I think John really likes him. You can see him as being that red zone target. 11 touchdowns in an offense that didn't throw a lot of touchdowns the last couple of years is where I think you really kind of see the upside of him. Is like, man, could he do that with all the limited opportunities in college? He scored 11 touchdowns for a tight end the last 2 years. That's really good. I mean, 7 touchdowns. I didn't even look where his rank was, but 7's got to be top 5 in college last year. I mean, it has to be for so it was definitely up there. So I think that's the red zone target. People can see it. And I think the RAS score is going to get, I think, would you say he was 999 or 998? Yeah, I mean, it's almost a 10. Somebody's going to fall in love with him. I mean, we saw it with Brent Strange last year, got a crazy high RAS score. He was from Penn State. Like, everyone's looking at the stats and they're like, that guy caught like almost no balls in college, but he was a mauler of a blocker and he showed the athleticism. And I think teams thought, we can make this guy into a good receiver because he's already got all the other things we want. So I think I could see someone doing the same thing with Theo Johnson this year.
Yeah, please, nobody put bad juju on Brenton Strange, as I have him. That's one of my backup tight ends in my dynasty, one of my dynasty leagues. John McGlynn, I like to hear the criticism keeps me grounded. I'm glad you're liking what you're hearing. I'm glad all of you online who are watching right now are liking what you're hearing. Gotta love all 232 of you who have been tuned into this show over the course of the past hour. We thank you very much. We were going to get to what our thoughts are on Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze, and kind of like parse out like which of these three is awesome.
This is the tight end show. It's a tight end show.
This is, they're all good. There you go. That's your answer. That's your answer you're looking for. But we're going to keep it at tight ends. Thank you very much, everybody who's been tuning in, everybody who's been participating in the chat. Stay tuned next. The second hour of Fantasy and Frames Wednesday continues with Fourth and Frames, where I'm joining Chris Battistell, Drew Scott, and Rhett Manuel as we talk about some discrepancies in our dynasty startup rankings. So literally give us like 2 seconds and we'll be on here talking shop. JT, as always, man, it is always awesome talking shop with you, buddy.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having the show. Pumped to talk IDP later on tonight.
I know, like we get a break. We get like an hour break from each other, and then starting at 10:15, 10:30 Eastern, you and I are back here talking IDP on Shoot the Gap. So for everybody out there, thank you very much for watching Dynasty 365. Stay tuned for Fourth and Frames. We'll catch you next week.
All right, brother, man. I'll see you soon.
I'll see you in an hour. Okay, bye.
All right.